The Edward style.
Edward is one of the oldest engines on the island of Sodor. He knows everything there is to shunting and pulling passenger trains, as has he spent many years doing so. Over this period of time, he's learned to do things slow and steady, and to be very patient, and most engines would agree. Some engines, however, thought otherwise. The three big engines, Gordon, James, and Henry, believed that work should be done fast and aggressively. But James disliked Edward's methods the most. One morning, Edward and the three big engines were waiting in the sheds. Gordon looked at Edward with a smirk on his face. I wonder how fast the trucks will fall asleep today with Edward shunting.
I'm willing to bet they'll forget what they're even being shunted in the first place.
Looks like someone's stuck in the early 1900s.
Edward wasn't fazed by their jokes, so he just smiled back at them.
At least I didn't lose my instinct while pulling the express, or mend coaches with a bootlace, or was afraid of a few drops of rain.
The big engines were very cross at this. They didn't like to be reminded of their incidents in the past. Edward whistled and left the shed, leaving the biggest engines fuming. That annoying little Edward!
Just who does he think he is?
I say we get back at him.
The three thought for a bit before looking at each other with a mischievous grin. Later that afternoon, Edward was shunting in the yard when Gordon whisked by his coaches. Slow and steady does not win the race. Then later, Henry puffed past with a goods train.
Even Thomas could work faster than you.
Then, James came by with a passenger train.
Is the old iron able to work fast?
Watch out for tar tankers on the track, James.
James suddenly screeched to a halt and furiously reversed, stopping right beside Edward.
What did you just say?
Judging by your reaction, I think you heard me crystal clear.
You better watch yourself, Edward. You speak heavily for such an old engine. What happened to me in the past doesn't matter anymore.
As James stormed off crossly, Edward simply laughed to himself and continued working. But little did he know, this would be a terrible mistake on his end. James heard him laughing.
I'll show him not to mess with a big engine like me.
Later that evening, Edward backed in his berth and was about to go to sleep when Henry spoke up with a stern tone.
So, Edward, I hear that insulting others is your new thing now?
What? What on earth are you talking about, Henry?
James here tells us that earlier today you made fun of his car accident, and you know that he doesn't like that at all.
Honestly, Edward, I knew you were old and I figured you'd go senile at some point, but not this soon.
Now you three listen here, and listen closely. Don't think I forgot about the insults you threw at me earlier today as you passed by.
The big engines blushed with embarrassment. They thought Edward wouldn't bring that up.
We weren't insulting you. We were just,
Stating facts is all.
Definitely not insult. We would never do such a thing. Well, same can be said for James.
Yeah, and what? Hey!
Look, the point being, you really need to stop getting so offended by my methods of shunting. Have you ever noticed why the trucks haven't given me any trouble at all for years? It's because I handle them with care. I tend to them slowly and carefully, and you should know that they don't like to be bumped aggressively. That's what puts them in the infamous bad mood.
Whatever logic you have going on in your boiler is utter tish-tosh.
You may believe that now, but one of these days you three will finally come to understand what it means to tend to trucks properly.
Hey, Edwin, nobody cares and nobody wants to hear your meaningless lecture. Just Drop it and go to sleep already.
Edward was hurt by James's harsh remarks. James had already dozed off to sleep with a satisfied smirk on his face. Although they didn't show it, Gordon and Henry felt that James had pushed it a bit too far. Early the next morning, when the engines woke up, James gave Edward a cold glare. Edward glared back as he puffed crossly out of the shed. When he rolled into the yard manager approached him.
Hi, Edward, old boy. Henry was assigned a different job last minute, so I need you to take his slow goods train to Vicarstown.
Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
Edward began to assemble his train, but made sure to do things his way. Slow and steady. As he finished marshalling his last few trucks onto his train, Henry puffed over next to Edward, looking rather sad.
What's the matter, Henry?
Listen, it's about last night. I didn't want to admit it, but I think James took things too far. Me and Gordon were doing some thinking, and we realized that maybe your method is right after all. We're sorry.
No need to be sorry, Henry. Many engines have disagreed with my methods before, but that's the uniqueness of having different opinions. At first, you don't exactly see eye to eye, but over time, you slowly begin to come together.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I'm off to the harbor. See you later, Edward. Oh, and watch out for James. I don't think he's happy yet.
This made Edward feel better, knowing that Gordon and Henry were now on his side. But the thought that James was still mad at him lingered. But he quickly put the thought aside and set off towards Vicarstown. Meanwhile, James was speeding down the line with a passenger train. He was still in a bad mood and was complaining non-stop.
Stupid Edward in a slow and steady. Who does he think he is? I'll show him. Oh, I'll show him all right.
As he was nearing Wellsworth, he noticed Edward holding a slow goods up ahead on the track next to him. This gave James a wicked idea.
I know. Once he gets to the top, I'll run up beside him very fast and scare him.
James began to pick up speed as he rushed towards Edward. Meanwhile, Edward was struggling up Gordon's hill. The heavy goods train was weighing him down, and trucks had decided to act troublesome. He was so focused on getting to the top, he didn't even notice that James was quickly approaching him from behind.
Almost there. Almost there.
At last, Edward reached the top, letting out a small sigh of relief. He was about to put his brakes on, but suddenly, James sped up beside him, whistling loudly.
Boo!
Ah!
Edward was startled and jolted forward. He had forgotten to put his brakes on as the trucks began to push him down the hill. Faster and faster he went, as all James could do was watch on in horror.
Oh no. Edward! Look out!
But it was too late. James quickly sped down the hill to survey the damage. There laid Edward on his side and battered. James looked at the scene with wide eyes, the image looking almost identical to his crush on his first day, filling him with a sense of guilt.
Oh my god. Edward, you okay?
I've been through worse.
I'll go get help right now. Just hang in there.
Soon enough, James returned with the breakdown train and the team quickly began to clean up the mess. Once Edward was back on the rails, James looked at him with a very sad expression.
Edward, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry about everything. You aren't that old, and your methods aren't bad.
Edward simply smiled at him.
We have our own opinions, and you should never be ashamed to have your own.
I guess so.
James coupled up to Edward, and the two set off to the steamworks. And ever since then, James has respected Edward's methods of work and never questioned him ever again.
They're 2, they're 4, they're 6, they're 8, shunting trucks and hauling goods, red and green and brown and blue. They're the really useful crew, all with different jobs to do. Round Timmins sheds are far away, going down hills and rounding bends. Thus outdoor engines. Thomas, he's cheeky and fun. James always loves showing off. Percy pulls the mail all night. Gordon thinks he knows it all. Emily really knows her stuff. Henry's kind but also smug. Edward wants to help and share. Toby, he is wise and old. They're wise, they're mean, they're all useful, doing jobs and helping out. Narrow gauge, standard gauge, and miniature too. They're all really useful too, doing different things all day. Round Timmins sheds are far away, running down Bridge, London meeting friends. The Sodor engines. They're green, they're gray, they're red, they're blue, hauling torch and carrying goods. Rexpert, Mike, and Jock too. They're small but strong, it's very true, all with different jobs to do. Round Croven's Gate and the Flake Quarry. Scar, Louis, her handle, and Luke too. The Sodor engines. Coldy, Patrick, and Wilfred too. The Sodor engines.